To see everyone. Hi. We got Natasha. We got Carlotta. Oh my goodness. Everyone look at Carlotta. If you want to fall in love instantly, look at Carlotta. Oh. And we have our friends from Russia. And we have Renata. Welcome. Hi, Brett. Welcome. Hi, Kia. I haven't seen you forever. Oh my God. We have some folk. Francesca. What are you doing? Nice to see you. And then we have a bunch of folk in person, and it's really nice in person. It's not cold. Who else we got here? Hi, Daniel. Again, nice to see you. Ninon! Oh, my heart, come hang out. And everyone else. Missy, welcome. Nice to see you. Megan. Hi, Emily. And Gabby and Claudia. It's so nice to see you all. Okay, I'll stop saying hi's. Hi, Julia. Oops, I did it again. Welcome, everyone. If you don't know where you're at, this place is called Three Jewels. It's not a jewelry store, okay? In the pandemic, you know, when we had all those riots, right? And people were boarding up New York. If you've met Diego, who was at the front, he slept here one night with the place boarded up. And he could hear outside at 2 a.m, someone saying, "Here's the Three Jewels." And he opens the door behind the boarding, and it's two guys wanting to smash into the jewelry store, Three Jewels. And he had to have a chat with them going, no, there's no jewelry. It's just a non-profit meditation center. It's okay. So then he made friends with some folk over there and told them to go smash another place. No, I don't know. I don't know what they did. But that happened last year. So it's not a jewelry store unless you imagine that reaching a state of being where everything to you feels pristine and you can experience this world as the most stunning thing you've ever experienced. In that sense, it's a jewel. Yeah, it's called the Three Jewels because there's three states of mind that we take refuge in. We, meaning the wake-upists or Buddhists, right? Take refuge in saying, if I apply my mind in this way, I have the jewel of protection as I navigate this world that could be dangerous, yeah, or is dangerous unless you have real protection. I don't know. It's an armor that you put on as a wake-upist, and it's not something physical. It's something that you create through habit in your own mind as you engage with reality. And so you might look like a crazy smiley person walking around a really tragic New York with smelly rats and pizzas on the subway, and you could be seeing bliss there where other people see just suffering, and you're aware that other people could see suffering, but you still see bliss. That would be walking around in a state of nirvana. And so here at Three Jewels, the Enlightenment Studio, we thought we'd market it and brand it and go, hey, everybody, it looks Instagrammable, come play. But really it's a trap for you to get enlightened, yeah? For you to understand that you too can reach a state where it doesn't have to be the way that everyone tells the suffering story of this planet. There is suffering here, there is problems. And Buddhists are really good at finding problems. So we can solve them, not so we can obsess about them. And solve them in an ultimate way, meaning they don't have to come and get you anymore. You'll see the shadows of them, but you're not hooked by them anymore. You're not reacting to the world like you used to. That's the promise. And me saying blah blah about the promise ain't gonna help you. You still gotta do something yourself. I sat in a class like this some 25 years ago, and the teacher was blah blahing, and my mind was like boring, stupid. Yeah, but that's not true. Like my mind was pretty harsh when listening to Buddhist talk around transcending suffering And I don't know what kept me. But now I have to eat all that bullshit that I said in my mind 25 years ago, and I have to sit here and go, she's probably thinking that, and he's probably thinking that, because I planted those things in my mind. But I don't know. I hope you hear the gems that I got to hear some 25 years ago, and that something Buddhas wakes up, Buddhas in you, enough for you to take your personal power back and not just be strung along through the human condition without the possibility that you could really be freed from suffering. That's the promise. And I know it sounds lofty, because we would like things to be easy. If I just had a job, and I just had a partner, and I just had a car and a dog, and I didn't have mental stories, and I just looked just right, everything will be okay. And it won't. Even if everything is okay, if you have a partner, if you have money in the bank, if you have the career, you will still have to encounter the inevitable things that the human condition brings. Yeah? If you haven't figured it out, you're aging and you can't bring back the hours. If you haven't figured out, your body will hurt, especially if you go canoeing for 3 hours in the Grand Canyon because your boyfriend tells you you have to. And then you're like, why do I still have to do this? And then the suffering that follows is like days of pain. But sorry, that's a personal side comment. Little dig at Stephen. Yeah. Our body ages, our body breaks, our mind breaks. And you can't escape those in an unexamined life. You can't just pretend things are okay and not look, and things will be okay. And if you can figure that out early enough, or late enough, whenever you figure it out, figure it out. It's like a window of wisdom will open up for you. It ain't coming from anywhere else. Then you better follow that thread if you want to stop the inevitable unexamined life. Unexamined life leads to what's coming for all these bodies of ours. Aging, sickness, and death. They say the 4 fierce river currents that we are all pushed under. They say, the Buddhists say, for 2,500 years, they're like, listen, don't get lost in all the pretty things. Enjoy the pretty things. Don't pretend they're not there either. They are there, they're awesome. The shiny objects. But don't just go grasping for the shiny objects and ignore the very power of these 4 fierce river currents. Birth. As soon as you start, you're bound to end. Yeah? Aging. Your hair will fall out. Sickness. Like something will come and get you. And then your whole mind shifts to that thing. And then all the other things you spent time doing don't seem as significant. And that's not to, so when we hear this, at least what I heard at the beginning is like, oh my God, so depressing. I want to go watch a movie, or I want to do something else. But there's real power at looking at truth. And then the truth of death. If you're lucky, you die when you're old. If you're lucky. If you're lucky, you'll die in a bed. If you're lucky, you'll die with a little pain, not too much. But that's not what happens to most everyone. And so this class, so all that to say, you're at 3 Jewels, and Buddhists really like talking about suffering. No. You're at 3 Jewels. It's a Buddhist studio. I'm Hector. I've studied this for about 25 years. We teach it here at 3 Jewels. The entire curriculum that a monk or a nun would study in 20 years, we've condensed it into a Western style 7-year course. And then out of those courses come all the practices that we do at 3 Jewels. So if you've done a meditation here, if you've done a yoga session class here, if you've done a workshop, if you've done our trainings, they all come from the same information. It's not Hector making something up, and trust me, it's something I've been engaged with for 25 years, and tried to go, well, what if it's not true? What if that's bullshit, And then now I'm sitting here teaching you. There must be a reason, yeah. Or sharing with you. I don't intend to be your teacher. So that's where you've landed. That's a nice uplifting start. I hope the Russians are catching up. How is the Russian speaking crew? Am I too fast? Natasha, good? Thank you. How about now? If I go like this, is it very good? Only kidding. So we have a small contingency of Russian-speaking communities that watch this class live, like at 2 a.m, or after. Yeah. So all that to say, what if you really began to examine your life? So it was an examined life. If it's anything like all the texts describe, and by text I mean the Buddhists from India and the Buddhists from Tibet, which is mainly where this information comes from, they're going to tell you you're going to get a little sad at first. Like the Buddha's first teaching was this 4 truths, or 4 Arya truths, they call them, 4 noble truths, they're usually translated as. And when Buddha, which was just a person with a human condition, saw some suffering in the world and wanted to wake up from it, and he got enlightened, Buddha'd, to wake up. When he woke up to how these things come about, the first teaching he gave, after being asked 3 times, so if you're a Buddhist, you'll know the tradition to ask your teacher 3 times, please, can you teach me this thing? And they'll go, no, no, no. Please, can you teach me this thing? No, no, no. Please, please, can you teach me this thing? And they go, okay. And that comes from the tradition of the Buddha being asked 3 times, hey, what happened when you got that Buddha, when you got enlightened? His students asked him, and he's like, no, I don't think I can share. He's like, no, no, what happened? Can you share? He's like, no. And then the first teaching he gave after he was asked 3 times is the 4 truths, the 4 Arya truths, or 4 noble truths. Meaning, he said, listen, life, this thing you call your experience, if you analyze it, it's suffering. And then he's like, but suffering is caused. The second thing that he said. Yes, there's a problem, but there's a reason for the problem. So don't get despondent, don't get despair, but don't pretend there isn't a problem. There's a problem. But it was caused. It had something made it be a problem. Then the third thing he said, and if you find that out, you can stop it, right? So the third thing he said is, you can stop the problem. And then the fourth thing he said is, these are the steps to do, he called it the Eightfold Path, in order to stop that problem. So here's a condition, it didn't come out of nowhere, something made it happen. It doesn't have to be that way, it can be not a problem. Yeah, you can be liberated from suffering. And this is what you should do. And that Eightfold Path essentially focuses all our attention on the way our mind engages with the world. And I think if you were here last week, I talked a little bit about the story we live in. We all live in some story, right? Put up your hand if you don't live in a story. Ha, Renata. It was a trick question. Yeah. Have you noticed there's always a narrative going on in your head? And if you analyze it a little more, it has a flavor, right? And I was just talking to a friend outside about the stories we live. It's convenient for us to live a story because we don't have to analyze too much. If you want to look at that from the modern physiological state of mind, where you say the brain creates structures that create frameworks through which you see reality, you don't really see reality, you see your framework pasted on the reality. And the more you do that, the more your mind sees that framework only. And those stories tend to be, I'm a victim, I'm not good enough, it's always someone else's fault, how come this happens to me? They don't tend to be super positive. They tend to be a little dramatic, like all the stories, yeah? And so I want to add a little bit to those stories that we talked about last week. Buddhist practice in that metaphor means pay attention to the story, realize that, yeah, the world is happening around you, but change your attention, your focus to what's the narrative going on that you're living. Just pay a little bit of attention. That begins to be an examined life. And you'll get depressed a little bit. Like you'll go, oh my God, when you start meditating, the first thing that you realize after a few months, I mean, put up your hand if this has happened to you, you get to realize there's more garbage in there than you thought. Like who felt that when they started meditating? Yeah. And for some of us, we'll recoil and like, oh, meditation's not for me. I think I'll do something else. You know, I mean, I had that impulse a long time ago. But then I didn't like the suffering any better. So I'm like, okay, damn it, I have to go and look at my mind again. And when you look at your mind, you'll come to the narratives. And so meditation is a really cool thing to do. It's not like, look at me, I'm at peace. It's not true. Meditation is like, really relax this body of yours, forget it even exists. Try and get to a single pointed focus on just one thing to warm up so you could look at what your mind is doing. And that one thing is usually the breath, right? Or a body scan or something. And so most of us modern folk get stuck there. That's meditation. Sure, it's got some biological side effects, but for Buddhists, that's garbage. It's like, okay, move on. It's like you turned on the car, but you haven't gone anywhere. What you want to do with that mind of yours, once you've got attention, is listen to your narratives. And so there's all these techniques to bring up your narratives and for you just to observe it. And meditation's cool because you're doing it in your own little hole in the ground, like in your own little cave or your own little room. Nobody's around, your eyes are closed, you're very still. And so there's nothing else to pay attention to but your narrative. And when you get good at that, that can take you 3-6 months to really get there. Are you willing to put in the work for 6 months to look at your narrative, to see your examined life? Most people are not. Most people want to have and I'm probably judging too many people at the moment, but most people, I think, just want the quick fix, right? They want the drug of meditation. Can this fix my problem? It can, but not just doing an Instagram meditation session, you know? It's not a once-off thing. It's you developing the muscle to look at your own narrative, the narrative of your story, right? So there's another layer there. When you start seeing your mind over a month or 2 months or 6 months or a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, meditating regularly, you can't escape but see the patterns of your narrative. And you've lived that movie how many times? How many breakups? How many job changes? How many shitty relationships? How many times have you fallen in love with a kitten, you know, or whatever it is that you fall in love with? How many times were you kind to yourself? And you just see your narrative and you're like, damn, who wrote that script? You know, I'm living this movie. Who wrote the script? And the more you look, the more you realize, well, this is why the study is called in Buddhism. You can shortcut that answer with logic, with reasoning. And the books will say, you wrote the script. You wrote it. Yeah, but I didn't like the story. Yeah, but that doesn't mean you didn't write the script. You're addicted to writing scripts as you react to a world that is hostile. And you react with hostility, imprinting hostility, which make you see the world as hostile, which means you react with hostility, which makes the world look like hostility, which then you react with hostility, and you're writing your script with your reaction to the world. And under analysis, you can come to a very visceral realization that what your actions are, what you do with your mind, with your words, and with your body in this world gets recorded in your mind. That's the imprints that write the script. That's the dialogue that's being written about you 3 months from now, or next time you're in a relationship, or next time you're out of a relationship. You'll play a script that you wrote a long time ago. And so with that wisdom, with that understanding, you can choose, as hard as it is, it doesn't mean it's easy, to at least not react. You can choose your response. And the more you get capable of choosing your response, the script begins to be different. And next time you're in a relationship, you don't have to react. You will see that you'll have some gap to choose. And then you write a better script. You're like, oh, can I have some compassion? Or can I try and understand them instead of yelling or whatever the story is? And the more you see that, the results of that, the more you get excited about writing a better movie. Yeah? And so I want to go a little deeper than that. Does that all make sense so far? That's what we covered, I think, most of the time. I feel I started on a downer, so everyone's quiet. Can I at least get some smiles or something going, yeah, Hector, we pretend that we're happy. Yeah, thanks. That makes me go, thanks, Ninon. Ninon's like, really happy. Yeah, good. And you can see our friends up there, okay. So I was thinking about this metaphor of the story, right? And meditation is the key. It's the hardest thing, even though it looks so simple. How hard is it to stay still and just not give a shit about whatever's going on in the room, right? Make sure your posture is nice and relaxed, and then you're just observing, you're bringing your attention to one thing until you get this kind of stillness going on, and then you know you're in this state of awareness that is focused. That's just the beginning of turning on the car and putting it in first gear. Meditation goes deeper than that. You want to go turbo, yeah? And to do that, you need the habit, you need the practice. And then you need to know what to put your mind on. Because for a while, you could just get addicted to watching your narratives and then not have the insight that you can shift it. You need time for that. Oh, I acted in this way, now my narrative shifted. And so today I want to go a little deeper if I can. Because we're still running a movie. We're still in a play, you see? The narrative is in a structure also. Most of us have watched or get addicted to Netflix series or whatever, right? Like, who's watched a Netflix series in the last month or something like that? Yeah, yep. Good, right? Did you notice that most of the time the characters are in some kind of tension? Like some bad shit's going on, and we're just waiting for that final release where they're all smiling. At least American movies do that, yeah? European movies or independent films tend to have a slightly different narrative. I think individualistic narrative, but most of the Hollywood stories are like trouble, 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 happy, trouble, 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 almost happy, trouble, 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 and everyone claps. Yay, finished. They're all happy. Got married happily ever after. Right? I don't know if you figured that out. That tends to be the Hollywood model. So just the fact that we're writing a story, we write it in that framework. And so in meditation, if you look deep enough, I think you can come to the realization that even the structure of running the narrative is still chasing after something. Like, oh my God, I'm creating tension just to try and get the fix at the end of the promise, right? Which is why we waste 2 hours watching a shitty film, yeah? Unless you like superhero film. No, I'm only kidding, yeah? Jenna liked that joke. Carlotta liked that joke. Juan didn't like that joke. No, just joking. Yeah. So what I'm proposing is, what if, like, just imagine this, right? What if you could really bring your mental attention to your mind enough to see your narratives? You could cut away 1 or 2 of the major obstacles of your life. The I'm not good enough narrative, or I'm always poor narrative, or why is it always me? Like, there's some negative narrative that we're always playing, right? And it's like trying to drive in first or second gear with the handbrake on. You can go and push the accelerator all you want, but if you've got some negative narratives, it's like putting the handbrake on. Or, I don't know, another metaphor might be watering down your fuel or something. So what if you just let go of that handbrake? What would it feel like to not have that story? You know, like, I still have a bunch of fear around things in my mind. I can pinpoint where it came from. I can say it started when I moved from Argentina to Australia. I can give you 1,000 reasons why fear would arise. Doesn't matter. Like, that's the Western psychological approach. In Buddhism, they say, okay, fine, whatever the reason was. Maybe your mum slapped you when you were 3. Okay, hooray, you found a reason. get rid of it. Like, it's not enough to go, oh, there it is. It's like, you're still living it now and you're 50. Get over it. Like, get over the thing that's holding you back. It's your job, not your mum's. Like, she hit you 50 years ago. You don't keep your mind on it, because you're keeping your mind on it and you're creating the narrative. At some point, face that fear or face that thing, choose a different response in meditation where it's safe. No one's watching. Mum's not watching. Mum isn't coming to smack you, right? In meditation, you get the practice of running the racetrack, of running the car, of running without the handbrake on. And that makes an imprint in your mind too. That writes a new narrative. You do that enough times in the simulation of meditation, next time the story comes up, Mum hit me, fear won't be as strong. So then you go, oh, that was exciting. You go back to meditation and you do it again. And gradually your whole handbrake goes off. Then you can go faster. But what I'm proposing here is the very structure of storytelling, the very structure that I am just a human, is also up for question in the Buddhist path. Like, really, right? We don't even think that. Buddhists say, don't waste your time. This body of yours, this vehicle of yours, it's dead soon. Honest, it's dead soon. Okay, don't get scared. Just know it's dead soon. What are you going to do between now and then? Okay, getting rid of the handbrake is easier now. You're like, okay, I don't need that bullshit. I don't know how long I've got. You know, like in the meditation teacher training, one of the practices we'll learn is a 3 or 9 step analytical meditation on death and dying. Yeah, just to bring our minds to the reality that that thing is going to happen. It's not to depress you. It's to say, don't waste your time collecting shiny objects that you can't use at that time. Go ahead and play with shiny objects that really make a difference. And mostly it'll be shiny objects of the mind, like love, compassion, like really powerful states of being that even if the body is paralyzed, your mind can still experience. Make sense? Yeah. So in this system, in the wake-upist system, all of the practices point to you shifting the narrative, but also careful that it's still a story. And most stories are tension, 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 tension. And so at some level, you're going to get rid of the story of the story. And that's a little bit more advanced for those of you who have taken vows, who have got practices that are Buddhist-y in detail. At some point, you're going to have to get rid of the story of your story, that it's all just a story. The Buddha said at some point, he said it in the Diamond Cutter Sutra, he said, this is a sutra on wisdom, the thing that you have, this insight you have when you go really subtle in meditation and you see the ultimate nature of your mind. In that, to get to that point, the Buddha said, before you get enlightened, you're going to have to burn the ship of Dharma that took you to the other shore before you hit the shore. Do you get that metaphor? Like and canoeing again. The boat of Dharma, bloody canoeing. I went to the Grand Canyon and my boyfriend made me canoe for like hours. And I'm fat, lazy guy. I don't do that. You know, like, so I'm like, but it was stunning. It was really beautiful, but my body hurts. The Buddha said, Hector, go canoeing. No. So the Buddha said, you know, if you want to transcend the ocean of suffering that is human existence here and the way we unexaminedly engage with life, if you want to traverse from the suffering shore to the enlightened shore through the ocean of suffering, use this boat of Dharma, the insight that you have that understands reality, your narrative, and the way your mind engages with reality and what causes suffering in the first place. Engage with that. That boat of Dharma, meaning the teachings of the Buddha or the insights that you get from those teachings, take that boat to the other shore, to the shore of awakening. But in the Diamond Cutter Sutra, he said, you're going to have to burn the narrative of the boat before you get off to the shore, because it's also a construct. And to me, that's really cool. Like to think that the system itself is also a construct that we build. That the only way to get out of the construct is to burn the ship that got you out of the construct. It's incredible to me. Right? It also ensures no return, by the way, which I thought was cool. You can't get back on the boat. But I don't think the Buddha taught that. I just said that. Yeah. Okay. Does that answer some questions, or does it? I tried to weave some of the questions that we've had. We got one thumb going, yeah, everyone else is asleep. Okay, cool. 2 thumbs up. Years like. So if that's the framework that we're working with, what are all these other practices? Why be compassionate? Why can't you just bash your way through life? Like taking everything you want. If you just want happiness, why don't you just go grab it? Why don't you just take it? Someone has got a car, get their car. It's cool. Someone's got a boyfriend, take their boyfriend. They're cool. Why don't we do that? You know, what are all these practices of compassion and ethics? There's another practice called joyful effort. Like, why do you have to be bloody happy doing all these things? Stupid. Any thoughts for non-students? Yeah, people that haven't come to my classes. Any thoughts as to why you would have those kind of compassionate practices, loving practices, taking care of the sick practices? Why would that be a thing? Anyone? Dead silence.
It comes back.
Huh?
It comes back.
It comes back. Good, yeah. It's you're just recording another narrative, right? Everything you do, say, and think creates an imprint in your mind. So let's say you found, I'm going to point at you again, Bobby. Bobby becomes my, is it a mannequin or something like the one? Yeah, anyway. A dummy, okay. I know. Bobby the dummy, no. If what I said was true, if what the Buddha said is true, that our experience of reality has nothing to do with the things, but 99.9% repeater to do with the imprints with which we experience the thing, the narrative with which we experience the thing. If that's true, which you can investigate in meditation and you can investigate in study classes through logic and the rest, assuming that's true, then how did the narrative get there? And I said it, right? It's like aggressive world, you act with aggression, that gets recorded in your mind, you experience an aggressive world. Yeah? Like I was standing over the Grand Canyon with Stephen, and there were all these reactions about a big hole in the ground, right? It was like, oh my God, I've never seen anything so majestic. Like real joy and spontaneous sort of heightened experience upon contact with the hole in the ground. And then, I know it's minimizing the Grand Canyon. Then other people were afraid to go to the edge. It was the same place. It was the same hole. And people were like, I can't, I'm getting anxious, I need to step back. Other people were fearful for other people. Don't put your camera over, please don't. And other people were like leaning, crossing the barrier and, doing not drones, they were, how come the same place at the same time solicits so many different responses? It can't be the place forcing that reaction on us. And yet we think it is. It cannot be the hole in the ground that made you fearful or happy. It's not possible. Your narrative created an experience of fear or happiness based on the hole in the ground. Why? Something in you. Nothing to do with the hole in the ground. The hole in the ground is empty. And logically you can understand it, but even me telling you, you're sitting there going, no, not true. It really is terrible or good or wherever the hell you sit on, I'm excited about the hole in the ground or I'm fearful of the hole in the ground. And that's how we create divisions. We find other people that have the same narrative as us or close enough narratives as us, and we're friends, not them. And that's misunderstanding the world. Meaning you think the hole in the ground forces you to be happy or unhappy. You do this at work. Who hates my boss? Oh, I hate my boss. Who else hates my boss? We're friends. Those people don't hate my boss, they'll hate them soon. They're dumb. And those people that don't hate the boss are like, look at the poor bastards who hate the boss, they're so dumb. We all think it's got something to do with the boss, and it's nothing to do with the boss. That's an examined life. When you examine it, you'll come to the realization that there ain't any nature to the holes in the ground or the bosses and the things we respond to. It all comes from us. That should scare you a little bit, because it means the entire responsibility for the world you're walking through is yours. That should also be extremely liberating, because if it's yours, you can shift the narrative by choosing your actions of body, speech, and mind so the imprints are genuinely the seeds of the result you would like to step into in the future. You want kindness in your future? Here is the shortcut. Be kind. You want joy in the future? Here is a secret. Be joyful, help others be joyful. Stay in a state of joy. Record narrative, record narrative, record narrative. You step into the world. I feel joy. Why did I feel joy? Must be the hole in the ground. No, it can't be the hole in the ground. It can't. Otherwise, everyone must be joyful. There wouldn't be a single person with fear if joy was coming out of the hole in the ground. Grand hole in the ground. It was disrespectful for me not to call it grand. Sorry. He rolled his eyes when I said hole in the ground. And he was also the one complaining about it being cold. Yeah. Sorry.
I will have cold in my future.
Yeah. Complaining in the future. No. Sorry. Do you see how subtle that shift is? It's so subtle. Now, Buddhists say, don't waste your time fighting all that over and over and trying to experience every hole in the ground as joy or whatever. Study. Use your meditation to shortcut to this understanding through reasoning. Reasoning and logic. Yeah? And so, has anyone got a pen? I'm going to do this thing. Apologies.
Yeah. That was great.
Good trajectory. Yeah. That was a perfect throw, by the way. Except for those that couldn't perceive it as a perfect throw, then that's your karma. Yeah? Okay. So for those of you who have studied here, you'll know that this is our iconic, logical proof of the ultimate nature of things. This object, right? If we look at it for what it is, the first thing that pops into our mind is pen. Lily, right? Brooke, that's Lily, sorry. I'm a little blind behind here. We got two people and I just communicated them wrong. Okay. Brooke said pen, right? Who doesn't see pen? Good. We got humans in the room. Duh, it's a pen. It's not like that big a deal. To find the ultimate nature of this object, we have to analyze where is this pen that Brooke named. Like, where is it? Is it right here? Is it right here? Is it the whole thing? Is it the curvy? Is it the plasticky? Like, what is it? Like the hole in the ground, right? That makes you fearful or whatever. Hmm?
The grand hole.
The grand hole, sorry, I apologize. The grand hole in the ground. Where is its penness? Yeah? And I said that very slowly. I'm sure it doesn't translate in Russian, but where is its penness? Right? Shh. Not intended, but intended. And so we want to analyze, because it is a pen. It's not a pen, right? It is a pen. Now, the big analysis of this object is, okay, if it is a pen, everybody perceiving it must perceive it as pen. So let's bring some puppies into the room and go to this object. And what do the puppies do, Brooke, when they see this object?
Chew on it.
They chew on it. Like, duh, if you were a puppy, you'd chew on it. Look at it. It's so good. Right? Not only do they chew on it, they're probably not saying, there is a pen, let me chew on it. They look at this object with their eye consciousness and they start to salivate because there's something in their narrative projecting or experiencing this as chew toy. And then if there's a human in the room, the human's like, shut up, stupid puppy, give me my pen back. Because humans are experiencing this object as pen. And so if we want to analyze the nature of this thing, what is it? Is it a pen or is it a chew toy? What is it really? And your mind should go somewhere. I don't know what your mind is doing. Is it a pen or is it a chew toy? It's one thing, it can't be two things. It. And to get there a little deeper, we say, okay, all the dogs get out of the room, all the humans get out of the room, and this thing, we place it here, nobody's looking at it. What is it then? What is it without dogs and without humans? Really, what is it without a perceiver? And your mind should have a little fart, right? It should go blank a little. It's like, what is it without anyone looking at it? Brooke? Like, no wrong answer. It's an object, but even object, right? Like, you could say it's cylinder, but you still need someone to experience it as cylinder. Dog don't do cylinder, right? Can you see how it could be anything? And so in Buddhism, we say it's either infinite potential or it's nothing, yeah? And then you're going to have to answer, well, what does that mean? But you would say, if there's nobody here, this object could be anything depending on who walks into the room next. So let's say the dogs walk into the room first. What is it at that moment? Chew toy. And then one human comes in. What is it at that moment? Pen. And then another dog comes in. And then another human. And so then you have to ask, well, what is the nature of this thing? If it could be a chew toy, it could be a pen, and it could be nothing, or it could be anything. Where is it coming from? What's it depending on? Is it coming this way and forcing itself as pen onto your awareness? Or is it coming this way and your mind is labeling it pen, and therefore it's a pen? Which of those two do you think it is? Yeah, it's that one. But we don't choose it, right? We're not like, I want it to be a chew toy at the moment. It's still a pen. I could chew on it, but I'm still chewing on a pen. The dog is not chewing on a pen. The dog is chewing on this chew toy or whatever they experience it at. So we know it's projected from the perceiving mind onto the object. Therefore, the object is empty of being pen. It's empty of that nature. It doesn't have penness by itself. It only has penness for the creatures perceiving it that way. If you stay with me for this last section, you'll get the essence of wake up as thought. Just like that, you also can't wish it to be something else. Something is forcing our minds to see pen. Something is forcing the dog to salivate. That is not this way, it's that way. Then the question comes, well, what made it that? What created the narrative that forced me to see this object as pen or chew toy? And that's where actions make a difference. You're forever recording your narratives by what you think, say, and do. That is the whole study of karma or dependent origination in Buddhism. It doesn't mean good luck, bad luck. It can be summarized that way, but it means whatever goes in must come out. You go good in, good out, garbage in, garbage out. And so what's its nature? Its nature, it has no nature. That's its nature. What's its reality dependent on? Well, it depends who's looking. It's dependent on the looker. It's the same, what's that wave, or is it that light particles? It can either be wave or particles. Yeah? And it makes a difference if someone's watching. It's the same thing. The reality of this object is empty of having any ness. For a puppy, chew toy. For a human, pen. For an ant, death trap or whatever. It doesn't have any of those three natures by itself. We've forced the nature onto us despite ourselves. We also can't choose it in the moment. But something made it. If you understand this stupid example of the cylinder could be three different things and many things, then it doesn't take a stretch to say that's the same for bubbly water. You could see why some people hate it, some people like it. Why the grand hole in the ground for some is exciting and for some terrible. It's nothing to do with the grand hole in the ground. There's nothing about a particular shape that forces a certain reaction. If you get this, at least intellectually, then you get obsessed about how do I move through this world and what's my mind planting every minute of the day. And we can't do that initially. You can't go turn the car on, put it on turbo and go. You can't do that initially. You have to go turn the car on, rev it up. Oh, I got the handbrake on. Better get rid of some of the shitty handbrake mental frameworks that I have. Then you could go first gear, second gear. Then you get more comfortable, go fourth gear, fifth gear, turbo. Yeah, and that's Buddhist practice. You walk around this very same planet. None of it has a nature like you think it does. None of it. It's just like this object. Your boyfriend isn't the way you think they were. Why? Sometimes you loved them, sometimes you were annoyed by them because they made you canoe. Yeah? Which one are they? They're empty of a nature. Have you ever had an argument with a person you love? Why do you argue with the people you love? Why do you hate the people you love? Why do you love the people you hate? Why sometimes eating certain thing gives you bliss? If ice cream gave you bliss, dulce de leche ice cream give you bliss, why doesn't it continue giving you bliss after the 5th spoonful or 10th spoon or 6th bucket? If it's got bliss in it, it should give you bliss. Nothing is radiating its substance. Our minds are forever creating that, just like this object. Once you understand that, I was so much better at catching. I also threw it just on the ground here. Once you get that, you get the reins for your own world, your own experience, for real. But you still have handbrakes on. Let's say you met a partner, boyfriend. It's an easy example because we're very emotional about our partners, very triggered by them, in a good way or a bad way, right? If all the love you feel when you first meet them is coming from them, which is what we think, right? That's why we chose them, because they look special and they sound special and whatever. If it's coming from them, then you're protective of them and you're going to treat them a certain way. As soon as they don't behave according to your narrative, you're pissed. And then in that upsetness, you behave towards them in a different way, writing a new narrative about how you're going to experience partners in the future. And so the reason for those practices of kindness, compassion, is to take the handbrake off the negative emotions that stop us from feeling bliss all the time, because it's available here all the time, because things don't have a nature. The nature is coming from us. If that's true, your mind should be going in all sorts of places about now. What about the 4 fierce river currents? What about aging and death and all the other terrible things that are worth investigating? And Buddha said, there's this painting outside in the middle section at 3 Jewels called the Wheel of Life, or Bhava Chakra, the Wheel of Becoming, or something. But it's a depiction of why we live in suffering human conditions, why we write these narratives. And in essence, it's because we misunderstand where the nature of things come from. We think the boyfriend made me upset. They did say something. It did upset you. But under analysis, your mind got upset under those conditions. There is no upsetness in even the worst language. Like the word F, I don't know how you're going to translate this in Russian. Yeah, the F word doesn't have a nature. And I apologize if I offend anyone, but I'm going to say the word, okay? But listen to the offensive nature of the F word. Friend. No, I'm kidding. I'm talking about the other F word. But listen to it. And the reason I'm using this word is because I moved from Argentina to Australia at the age of 10. And I sat next to a kid in school, some of you heard this story, who spoke English better than me. He was Chilean and he had spoke English 3 months longer than me. And I didn't speak any English. And I get put into a classroom, 6th grade, and the teacher's just teaching. There was no ESL, English as a second language. It was just like, teach. I couldn't understand a thing. And in Argentina, the teacher is like revered, like second to your mom. You go to her house on Sundays, you make offerings to the teacher and so on. And so like really respect the teacher. So I'm like, I want to be the guy with the apple and be a show off and say my first English words in the room. And I ask my Chilean friend, how do I say, I don't understand, but I want to learn. He tells me in his broken English. I put up my hand, the teacher turns around, and I say, Miss, fuck off. I know, first words in an English classroom, and I'm thinking I'm being a good boy, right? Miss, fuck off. All the Aussie kids are just rolling around laughing, and I'm like, I said it wrong. Maybe I mispronounced it. You know, everyone's laughing. The teacher doesn't look happy. I'm like, something's not right. She drags me out into the hallway. I think she knew what was going on, but all I remember is her finger in my face going, no good, no good. I'm like, no, I know no, good. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't sound good. Right, no good. And it took me like, I don't know, I'm dumb. It took me a minute or two to go, I just said a rude thing. Like he's not my friend. Like it's all started unloading. I'm like, damn, that wasn't what I wanted to say. A whole bunch of things. So I come back into the room, they're all laughing. And he's like, ha ha ha. And I'm like, I'm going to get you. And anyway. But if you hear the word, right? Fuck off. There's nothing offensive in the fa or in the ka or in the entire thing. Fuck. Like, especially if you hear it, I'm sorry, but it's true. I'm hearing it as a kid, right? Fuck. I wouldn't have said it if it was offensive. The sound doesn't have the offensive nature. It wasn't that offensive that everyone was upset in the classroom. The kids were laughing. It was funny. Fucker, fucker, fucker. It doesn't have the nature that we ascribe to it. But it functions, right? Once you learn it, you can't unlearn it. I knew instantly that if I ever used it again, I was going to get a lot of attention. Like a lot of attention. So of course we used it a lot. No, as a kid you do. But where is the offensive nature in a Spanish mind when you hear the sounds fa, ke? It's not there. So something in our minds are creating that in that sound. Same for the boyfriend. They said some words, you got very offended. It's not in those sounds. It can't be. Like the pen. And if you understand that, that still doesn't stop the world from hurting you. Okay? You will get hurt. You will get offended. You're doing it anyway. But this tool begins to give you back the rein to choose whether or not you're going to create more offensiveness by yelling back at the offensive fucker. And then all of a sudden, you really have a practice that will create a different reality. And sorry, it might take 5 years before you really get results. Do you have that discipline? Do you have that wish? Have you suffered enough to not want the suffering? Enough to try something crazy like meditating? Have you done enough hurting in this human condition that you want to take responsibility for the forced projections onto objects that lack inherent existence. And my advice, if you're young enough, is don't wait for more hurt. Just ask older folk. Do you get to keep all the money that you made in your career when you die? Do you get to keep all the nice moments you had with all the boyfriends you've ever had? Does your narrative get any better all by itself without any effort? Or do you create a grand hole in your ground that you can't get out of because you've spent too many years just thinking that things offend you? And you just dug a hole. Is the hole too big to dig out of? I'm saying don't wait until you dig the hole. I'm mixing too many metaphors. Now I'm thinking Thelma and Louise going over the big hole in the ground with the digging themselves in. But anyway, sorry Russians, Thelma and Louise is an American movie. The point of wake-up-ism is not to be cool and super spiritual. I know we'd make it that way at 3 Joules. Like, we have really cool merch. We do very sarcastic memes about suffering and happiness. We play with the idea that we all look like perfect spiritual people. But it's really looking at the mess, the big hole in the ground that we create by our habits that are unexamined. Before you create more layers, I invite you, and you don't have to be a Buddhist, you can just be a person with a mind that is projecting pen rather than chew toy. Because both those options are available to any mind. And we're lucky to be projecting not chew toy. We're lucky to have even that habit of thinking that we can get out of suffering. Some people can't. If it's all projections, I'm lucky that I'm able to have clear enough mind to see the nature of this matrix and the agency to steer my mind towards the place I would like it to go. Love, compassion, insight, wisdom, and a kind of unity between any living thing. Every one of the living things we experience on this planet has the same potential as a Buddha. For real, because we have a mind. And our mind projects who we think we are too. That narrative is also a boat that needs to be burnt at some point. Hector wasn't always this. It won't ever be this again. It's just a momentary projection, like Penn-ness on a cylinder. This is an old arm or a young arm. Depends on the narrative. It could also not just be an arm. It could be a tool for expression. The narratives are infinite. Wake up as practice. Get you to not just take the handbrake off or go in turbo, but really like supersonic speed orbit out of suffering. It's also a projection. That's the invitation for practice. I thought I was going to share something else about the laws of karma because it's heady and it's a nice list and I can do that easily. But I felt called to answer the summary of practice in as many weird metaphors as possible. Yeah, hole in the ground. So thanks so much for listening. For those of you starting meditation teacher training on Friday, I can't wait to see you and to go deep into this unraveling of the narrative creator. So take a deep breath and get ready on Friday. For those that are not doing the meditation teacher training, no. For those of you that's not funny, Hector. You're a Buddhist teacher. Be a good Buddhist teacher, okay? For those of you who are not doing the teacher training, don't worry. There's plenty of things at 3 Joules that you can go deeper into this understanding, like an Eastern perspective on a worldview that really gives you agency to create the world you'd like to create. And it sounds magical, and it can be magical, but it's bloody hard work. It's hard work. And I hope you work. It's better than the other work. You don't keep any other work. If you want to ask questions for anything you'd like me to cover next time, please look at the QR code above. Send me any of the questions that you'd like. This happens every Tuesday. It's open class. I hope it's opening up. Was that meaningful today, or was it okay? Was it, yeah? Do something with the quick momentary projection you're having about this, even if it's, think about my life in a different way tonight or something. So this is free or by donation, which means you're invited to donate. We're a non-profit. We only use the money for making more of these things accessible to people that maybe don't have access, and to pay the New York rent and all the other stuff. So I invite you to donate, non-profit. If you do make a donation, it's tax deductible. Meditation teacher training on Friday. Check out our new schedule with yoga and meditation classes that are themed around these Buddhist practices, and hang out with any of the lovely people at Three Jewels. It's just a volunteer-based place that just looks like we're professional. We're not really. Only kidding. We are. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you on Tuesday.